Hi all you wonderful people and welcome to Simply Scuba's question time. It's just me, Mark, today. Sean, I think we mentioned it yesterday, but Sean's actually just redecorating his house. Now, obviously because we're filming at home, it is quite important to give you guys an interesting and fruitful backdrop, and sort of Sean's just kind of zhuzhing up his at home. You'll see him again on Monday. It's just me answering your questions because, let's be honest, I'm the one who tends to answer most of the questions. Sean does have some input at points, but most of the technical stuff is sort of down to me. If you do have any sort of questions, doesn't necessarily have to be about scuba diving, but scuba diving relevant questions are usually the best. Let us know down in the comments below and we'll add them to sort of next Friday's sort of video. If I don't answer your video in today's video and you have asked us a question, don't take it personally. It's just we get a lot of questions, and to try and keep this as short as possible, we only tend to do about 8. But yeah, if you do have any burning questions, let us know down in the comments below. So the first question comes from Gunnar Orn Gunnarsson, and he asks, or she, I don't honestly know, is there anything on diving with asthma? We'd love a detailed discussion on the topic. Have a lot of videos left to watch, but haven't seen anything. Love the content. Greetings from Iceland. Greetings. Yeah, that would be quite interesting. It's quite tricky because with asthma, it's a lot of... It depends. I mean, personally, I grew up, I had asthma as a child, but then I kind of grew out of it. I think there's like a childhood asthma, and then sort of as you grow up, you can get like grown-up asthma or something. I don't fully understand it, to be brutally honest. But even with sort of adult asthma and scuba diving, it depends. It depends what brings it on. It depends how severe it is. The best thing to do is to ask your GP or your dive doctor would probably be better. And they'll basically go through it. I mean, if it's like dust or it's like pet hair, if that brings it on, I think you're going to be okay scuba diving. There's not much pet hair underwater. The air that we breathe is like double or triple filtered, so that kind of contaminant isn't really an issue. If it's brought on through like stress and an activity, that's when you really do need to sort of discuss it with your doctor so that they can sort of sign you off or kind of advise against it, because dive professionals, we don't have MDs. I imagine some of us do, but not all of us do. It's not a requirement. So yeah, it's that kind of thing. When you go to do your sort of introduction, well, any scuba diving course, I'll bet my bottom dollar you will have to sign a self-assessment medical questionnaire, and one of those questions will be, do you or have you ever had asthma? If you do, or if you have, then all it is you go to sort of discuss it with a doctor. And then it's very much sort of up to them, because they know a lot more about the human body than dive instructors do, basically. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was a a HSE medical that I had to go through every single year, and yeah, it always came up as like, oh, okay, you had childhood asthma, yeah, so you do breathing tests, all sorts of tidal flow sort of tests and analysis, and then some like step aerobics, basically sort of monitoring heart rate and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's kind of it. It would make quite an interesting video. I think the best people to probably sort of look at if you want to research it are probably Dan, the Divers Alert Network. They do a lot of like medical research into these kind of areas specifically for scuba diving. So yeah, sort of check out Dan, and yeah, you might find an interesting article there. But otherwise, yeah, sort of ask your GP or sort of search online for a dive doctor and just have a discussion with them. And yeah, that's probably my best advice. Next question comes from SMKTF, which sounds like a sort of a news radio station, but they ask, I'm going to the Maldives in November 2022, lovely, what kind of suit would I need, or could I use rash vest and rash shorts? November time in the Maldives, Yeah, I think I looked it up earlier, and the water temperature tends to be around 29 degrees Celsius, which is pretty warm. That's board short and rash vest territory for me. If you particularly feel the cold, or if you are doing some like really deep dives, then yeah, it might be worth sort of bringing a shorty or something. But realistically, 29 degrees, you should be fine in a rash vest and board shorts. And yeah, rash vests are kind of my like personal crusade at the moment, because when I sort of first became a scuba diver, it was like, oh yeah, sort of rash vests, they help you get your wetsuit on. I was like, oh okay, whatever, fine. But actually, they do so much more. The main thing is that they basically replace your suntan lotion or sunscreen or whatever you want to call it, because the fabric itself, it's not like a traditional t-shirt fabric, which kind of, they call it grinning, when the fabric kind of separates and allows the sun to get through. So rash vests, they actually have UPF ratings. That's one of the big things on a lot of labels that you'll see when you get a brand new rash vest. It will be like UPF 30, UPF 50, or UPF 80 or something, because the material is literally protecting you from the sun, but they also protect you from marine bites and scrapes and stings as well. A lot of the time, a jellyfish sting can't physically penetrate deep enough through rash vest material, so they're protecting you a lot. So yeah, I tend to wear sort of rash vests in sort of water temperatures. But yeah, November in the Maldives, about 29 degrees Celsius, I think I read. So yeah, you should be fine just in sort of rash vests. Next question comes from Mike. Succinct name as always. And Mike says, thanks Mark, you're welcome. I appreciate Sean's inserts. Yeah, Sean's the editor, he puts funny things in. I often don't get to see what he puts in, so I dread to think what you're referencing to. But he says, if you're not legally or organisationally prohibited from doing so, would you please include a mention of the MSRP in the product videos? Thanks again. Yeah, so this is an interesting one, and we get this question quite often, and I thought it would be quite interesting just to sort of bring it up. So obviously in our product videos, I go over all the sort of the ins and outs of the products, but I always tend to avoid the price, and this comes from a few reasons really, but the main one is that the prices fluctuate. Now, obviously, if I mention like the web price, which is what they're like currently selling at, that is so volatile. So I'll never ever mention that because it'll probably be out of date by the time the video actually goes live. The MSRP or the RRP, the recommended retail price, that one's a little bit better, but it still fluctuates year on year. So that one, again, is a little bit tricky. But what we're actually planning to do when we start getting products again, sort of physical, tangible products that I can film, because if you didn't know, they're all in the warehouse. Of course, I can't travel backwards and forwards in the current climate. So what I'm planning on doing, instead of saying, right, this mask retails for whatever the price is, I'm going to try and sort of create like a scale kind of system where instead of saying it is exactly this price, I'm going to say, right, on average, this is like an expensive mask, or this is the most expensive mask, or this is a cheap mask. So at least you get a kind of a reference of sort of how expensive an item is. It won't be exactly on the price because, as I said, they fluctuate. But I'll try and get a like a scale basically, and I'm planning on doing that with like the weight of products and like other specifications on them to give you guys a better idea on, yeah, is this like an expensive mask, or is it actually a reasonable price? Is it particularly heavy for a pair of fins or a dive computer, or is it light? So yeah, that's what I've got going forwards, sort of being planned. Yeah, it's a good question. We do get asked it sort of fairly often, and yeah, that's why basically. Yosua Odang asks, would split fins be efficient when swimming through a mid to strong current? Oh, pardon me. Not really. So split fins split the market. Huh? they come in and out of fashion, and one of the things they're quite famous for is not doing particularly well in current, because the way they work is they have two separate sort of sections of the fin either side. They're called leaves, and as you I used to have a pair, but they're not around. Oh, they're over here. Let me grab them. So so they have two separate leaves, and as you go through the water, these bend, and what they do is they basically create like a little vortex, and it moves you through the waterway with minimal sort of effort. So they're quite good for very chilled out diving and sort of moving. But as soon as you put too much force in it, they really do sort of buckle, and then you start to lose your propulsion. So not really is the thing. I mean, they will sort of move you, but if you really try and fight it too much, then they end up sort of losing efficiency. They're better at more chilled out diving. What they really do specialize in is that they don't take up very much energy from your legs, so they're great if you have sort of knee problems, and like too much sort of force tends to wear you out too quickly. They're great for that. However, if you really do need to sort of push it and force your way through the water, they do tend to struggle. That and sort of frog kicking, they don't do too well with that. Next question comes from Emmy Lee, and they ask, I have a question for Mark. Cool. Bobbitt worms haunt me in my dreams. Would it do any damage to any ecosystem if we hunted these creatures from hell to extinction? So Bobbitt worms, I don't think I've mentioned them much on the Simply Scuba channel. I mentioned it on my sort of temporary channel when all things were going a little bit crazy, as one of my, like, I can't remember, like 5 things that scare me about scuba diving. Bobbitt worms are a horrible little like buggy creature. They're kind of a cross between a beetle and a worm. They're only about an inch across, but they can grow up to about 3 meters long, which is like 9 or 10 feet long or something. And these little critters, they kind of burrow themselves into the reef or sort of into a substrate, and then all you see is this like mandible claw sort of jaw that sticks out of the sand. They've got little sort of antennae which kind of attract a fish, and then it's like a bear trap. They just snatch this fish and sort of pull it under. There was actually one case in a aquarium, I can't remember which, but they had all of their like rare fish just start disappearing, and they couldn't understand why, and they found that there was like a single bobbitt worm had sort of managed to get its way into the tank, and it was just decimating everything. It's never a good idea to just outright kill an entire species, because we don't really know what the effect is sort of going down the line. As far as I understand it, they kind of eat anything they can get their hands on, but still, I don't think it's sort of worth killing them all, just because you never know down the line. You're like, oh, if only we still had bobbitt worms. They are. I think most of it is that they just look kind of ghastly. Some of them have like pretty rainbow colours on them, but they're actually kind of terrifying. But I don't think it's recommended that you remove them from the ecosystem. Next question comes from Eric Alexander. Have you yet mentioned the new deep diving pool in Poland? I did a Instagram post on it when it was sort of first opened. I don't know if we've actually mentioned it on the podcast, to be honest. So this was, I think it's literally just called like Deep Pool, Deep Spot in Poland. So this is, I believe at the moment, the current deepest swimming pool in the world. This opens, I think, like November, December time. Call me wrong. It was a couple of months ago. And so at the moment it's 45.4 meters deep, which sort of knocks off Y40 off the deepest dive pedestal. But yeah, it looks cool from everything that I've seen. So they've got this huge sort of open section with all sorts of different like levels, and then they have that one big sort of tube that goes all the way down to 45 something meters, and sort of glass tunnels that run sort of through the that main sort of big open section. It's designed for scuba divers and free divers and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's very, very cool. It's gonna, I imagine it's going to be a little bit tricky to regulate sort of divers, because there's always that like temptation just to, oh well, it's only down there, I'll just go down to the bottom. But if you're not certified to go down to sort of 45 meters, yeah, you almost need some kind of policing down there. That's why I liked Nemo 33 in Brussels, because it's 33 meters is kind of your sort of most like advanced divers can get down to 30 meters, but yeah, 45 is a bit more serious. Yeah, it looks cool. I'd love to sort of travel there after all this nonsense has gone away. But yeah, deep spot. Check it out. You can sort of buy tickets. I don't know what the current sort of lockdown measures are in and around Poland, but yeah, if you fancy it, check it out. Yeah, you can buy tickets on their website and all that kind of stuff, and see sort of pictures and stuff. I think you can learn to dive there as well, which is pretty cool. So yeah, check it out, Deep Spot. I'll see if I can remember to put a link down in the description below. Next question comes from Sylvester08. Anyone have trouble with the neck seal tight around the neck? Mine makes it very difficult to breathe, especially with a hood on. Yeah, very common sort of problem, especially with brand new dry suits. Especially with latex neck seals. I always tell a story when I was diving in Norway, and they gave me this literally brand new dry suit. And what most divers do when they get a brand new dry suit is they stretch the neck seal over like a 12-litre tank or like a bucket or something, just to sort of stretch, because latex stretches. It takes some time to sort of ease into it. So you kind of want to stretch it first. So you do that sort of overnight, and then you try it on, and then you stretch it again, because yeah, they will literally choke you out. And yeah, this one that I had up in Norway, I literally had to take off because I was starting to feel lightheaded, and it was just getting dangerous. So yeah, I took that off. But yeah, if you do have a particularly tight neck seal or cuff seals, try and stretch it over something. Not too much, because they can sort of rip and tear, so be careful. Sort of read up online, and this is what size to sort of do it. I tend to do it over like a Coke bottle, and that sort of stretches it. After it's stretched and it eases up a little bit, then you'll see it's got like little like ribs, like rings around that seal. Those are sort of lines that you can cut around. Do it very, very carefully, and that just allows you to sort of space it up to make it a little bit bigger, but only ever do that after you've stretched it, because the last thing you want to do is cut it and then it fits really nice and comfortably, but then in a couple of months it stretches over your neck, and then it's too loose, and then you need to buy a new neck seal. So yeah, it is very common, and yeah, it makes it very difficult to breathe, and it makes it very difficult to sort of blood flow to get to your head. So do be very careful with tight neck seals. If you like put it on and it feels particularly tight when you're just getting kitted up, then stop. It's not worth going on a dive, because yeah, it'll sort of restrict blood flow. Next question comes from Max Torque. Q&A for Friday. Awesome, because it is Q&A for Friday. What is the best method for SMB or DSMB, I imagine, deployment if you dive with a full face mask? Interesting. Lots of options. All feel a bit clunky for me, and all have their drawbacks. Well, first of all, it depends on your DSMB and how you can inflate it. If it's open bottom, you can use your exhaust. It's not the neatest. because a lot of full face masks, they'll have an exhaust at the bottom. Some of them you can actually direct them, like the Ocean Reef Raptor. You can actually direct like which direction or both directions the bubbles actually come out from. So you could do that. But yeah, you've got a lot of hardware kind of around your face. You don't want it to sort of get snagged up in the line as that suddenly shoots up. Personally, if I was doing it, I'd use the inflator hose if you have that. So on most sort of DSMBs, you get these type of sort of nozzles. That's the same as your BCD inflator. So what you do is you get your BCD or a dry suit hose. If you want to, you can sort of have an extra one, because these don't have to be connected to anything sort of whilst it's in the water. The Schrader valve stops any gas from leaking. If you don't want that sort of extra hose, you just use your BCD inflator. Try not to use a dry suit inflator. I did that once, and reconnecting it just shoots a little bit of water sort of into that valve, into your suit. So that's kind of a rude awakening when you reconnect it. But yeah, I've done it sort of plenty of times. Just disconnect your BCD inflator, and then you can just sort of retract the little collar, push it onto the nozzle. That inflates the DSMB, holding onto the spool with one hand, and then that shoots up. You're done. Reconnect your hose, and that's it. That's probably the neatest, because you can't orally inflate the DSMB with a full face mask. But yeah, that's probably how I would do it. Try and use a inflator hose if you have that fitting. If not, it would just kind of have to be the old-fashioned sort of octo. Just be careful not to get it caught up in the line. And the final question comes from Vernon Hendon III. And they ask, do I need a dive computer if I'm taking a beginner's course? No, so this is sort of a familiar question, and it's a great question, because when you're first starting out, you don't really know, like, what do I need to bring, and it's not always immediately obvious from a lot of dive centers. So when you're first starting out, it's not really expected that you have any of your own equipment, to be honest. A lot of divers, they tend to bring their own mask, and that's about it. But it's not unusual for someone to not have anything. It's not expected of you to have sort of all your stuff. If you want to invest in your sort of own kit, then that's great. Just be careful and make sure that you don't buy the wrong piece of equipment, and then you're kind of stuck with this thing that isn't really suitable. But no. So basically, if you're thinking about like starting up on scuba diving, then yeah, sort of have a chat with the dive center and have that as sort of one of your questions. Okay, what do I need to bring, and are there any sort of costs? It's rare that they'll charge you for like equipment rental. Normally the equipment is kind of built into the price, especially for introductory courses, because we don't really assume that you're going to have your own regulators and your own BCD and your own wetsuit and everything. We don't really expect that of you. The only time when you start to get charged for like equipment rental is maybe sort of advanced, kind of definitely when you start to get into like the rescue territory, especially in like dive master and master and all that kind of stuff. So no, when you're first starting out, it's not a requirement, but do double check if there are any rental fees before you sign up for a course. Some dive centers can be sneaky, and that's why, this one's really a cheap course. I'm going to go for that one. Oh, but then you have to buy all of your materials as a separate item, and then you have to sort of pay for your pick or whatever it is, and then you have to buy sort of equipment rental fees and all that kind of stuff. So it ends up being more expensive. So yeah, double check, but no, when you're first starting out, we don't expect you to have your own dive computer. Yeah, and that's it. Those are all of my questions. Yeah, if you do have any burning questions, by all means, let me know down in the comments below. For as many of them as possible, I'll try and sort of reply in the sort of comment threads, and if it is an interesting enough question, we will sort of elaborate on it on the Friday show. But yeah, we're kind of busy. I don't always get a chance to reply to everyone's questions as quickly as I would like. But yeah, by all means, if you do have any questions, not specifically about sort of scuba diving, but anything that you can think of. I mean, we were talking about Bobbitt worms as well. Let us know down in the comments below, and we would love to have a chat. Yeah, stay tuned. Saturday, Sunday, we've got a couple sort of interesting things. On Saturday, what was I talking about? I was talking about nitrox, sort of the benefits of nitrox and why you should be diving on it. And then on the deep dive, I'm going into dive knives. So if you're on the market for a dive knife, then I'm sort of breaking down all the different sort of sections and sort of what you should look for in a dive knife. So stay tuned for that. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And of course, come back on Monday and you'll see Sean's glorious face as we talk about the latest underwater news. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.